like my job, and I've been a mental health nurse for almost, it's more than 40 years, so I'm not going to give my age away. September last year, I was walking my dog and she happened to pick a fight with another dog. During that fight, I intervened and I was bitten by either of the dogs, I don't know which. As a consequence of that, I contracted sepsis with quite a virulent bacteria. Essentially, went into shock, lots of organ failure, and the result of all that is what they call a quad amputation. All of my life, I've been very independent. I never felt as if I'd lose it. I always just thought, and I still do, it's something you're constantly working towards. My wife's the gardener, not me. I used to do the heavy jobs. You know, the carer thing is quite important. I think the big thing for Anne has always been, if I know the help's there and how to access it, then that makes me feel better already. When I was considered to be medically fit, before I was actually discharged, this rather nice man called Nadeem turned up, and he explained that he was the hospital social worker. He explained the concepts of social care. As soon as we started the assessment, it was obvious that we were also going in a direction.
What makes me proud about working within the hospital setting is having the opportunity to work with hospital OTs, physiotherapists, doctors, working with the individual to meet that individual's need collectively. Crucially, the individual is the heart of the work that we do.
The right services were put in place in a very caring way. Nadeem was the hub. Essentially, it did feel like a joined-up approach.
I think Julian naturally is a confident man, and I think it was about trying to ensure that we harness that positivity that Julian has. The strategy offers us opportunity to work with individuals around their needs and promote their confidence and independence, and allows them structure and control to think about the services that they want and how they want to live independently within the community.
All the services that I need have been provided and I feel well cared for. The difference that adult social care has made is the difference between being in an institution and being miserable and being at home and being happy.
My life was a bit of a struggle. I've always wanted to do things like be out and about, meeting new people. Basically, my head was all over the place.
I started working with Shane in May 2017. His social worker in the transitions team referred him to the Knots Enabling Service. I know that Knots Enabling Service have changed Shane's pathway for the better. His social worker told me that he was planning to commission 2 days of day services for Shane. And now what we have is someone who's happy with their life, working hard, getting paid, and for those other 5 days a week not being bored, sat at home.
Ever since me and Aidan have been talking, ever since I've called him my brother, he's shown me some good skills, he's a nice lad. I can't have no one better than him, because he's quality.
I quickly found out that Shane was very good with people and his social skills were great. He always makes me laugh. He wanted to do some gardening and also he wanted to help people, which is why he did some volunteering at the community gardens. I increase a person's confidence by focusing on what strengths they do have, because I believe if you focus on things that interest someone, you're likely to get the best out of them.
I have the confidence to actually do something now in my life.
I'm proud that I've enabled someone to be able to do those things that they wouldn't necessarily be able to do before or believe that they could do. And I think that sums up what the Knots Enabling Service is about. We've changed someone's life for the better and actually made him more independent.
My passion is basically birds of prey. The best of all are my peregrines. everything you've got is all based on a bond. If you haven't got that bond, you haven't got anything worth having. When I got told that I'd got dementia, I was told that it would gradually get worse, so it meant I had to get rid of my car. I got rid of quite a few of my Falcons and what have you. Hardly anybody ever rings me up about Falcons at all, see. You can't expect it to go on forever, but anyway, it's finished with now. Mary and myself do everything that we can. We help one another. So we've said at times we'll have to have some help.
As an occupational therapist, I try to promote a person's independence. I always start off with a person-centred approach because we just want the best for the person. So I think that's quite a good thing as a therapist, to work in a team that do actually promote that. When George initially came home from hospital, he did state that outdoor mobility was one of his goals.
I'd been in the house for a long time and I was quite pleased to be able to get out and have a walk. I says, I haven't been out for weeks.
From the very young age, when I was a child, I used to idealize my father. He was very fit and athletic, and he was a police officer, so he used to do exercise every day. I used to think, oh, one day I'm going to be like him. So keeping myself healthy and fit, that meant a lot for me. I contacted Nottinghamshire County Council Adult Access Service because it was recommended by my friend.
People normally get in contact by phoning the customer service centre. Information's gathered, then it's passed through to the Adult Access Service, who will then call back, have a conversation and establish the best way to assess somebody. Seema was invited to our clinic. She was very nervous, didn't know anything about equipment, and unfortunately she'd lost confidence trying to access her bathing facility. She stopped taking care of herself because she was scared.
Jane made me feel so valued because she was listening to me, and she was very good in picking where I was struggling. And she
Okay, morning everyone again. Live stream is now working, I'm told. So I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Improvement and Change Subcommittee, which is being held remotely, broadcast live and recorded for publication. I'm Councillor Reg Adair and I'm chairman of this subcommittee. For the benefit of viewers of the live stream, I will now ask the clerk to the committee, Keith Ford, to list the other members present today.
Thank you, Chair. So, as well as Councillor Adair, we also have the following members of the committee present today. We have Councillor John Cotty, Councillor Jim Creamer, Councillor Kate Fall, Councillor Tony Harper, Councillor Richard Jackson, Councillor David Martin, Councillor Diana Meal, Councillor Philip Owen, and I can say that we also have Councillor Kate Cutts on the call as well. Thank you. As well as myself, in terms of officers present today, we also have the following officers present. We have Deputy Chief Executive and Corporate Director Adrian Smith, Service Director Marjorie Toward, Service Director Nigel Stevenson, Service Director Derek Higton, Service Director Matt Neal, Group Manager Sue Milburn, Group Manager Marie Rowney, Interim Head of ICT Mark Davies, Portfolio Manager Joe McCarthy, Project Manager Phil Cooper and Group Manager Rob Disney. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Keith. That's that. So the next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of January 2021. Can I take members' show of hands to note your agreement, please? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And apologies for absence. Is there any apologies for absence? Or
There are no apologies received, thanks, Chair.
no apologies for absence. And then there's declarations of interest by members and officers, disclosable pecuniary interest, private interest, pecuniary and non-pecuniary. Any of those, please? It doesn't look like any of that. Thank you very much. And then we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is improvement and change in the police department. And I think we have our Deputy Chief Executive, Adrian Smith, who's going to take us through that. Is that right, Adrian?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Adair. Good morning, members. Good morning, colleagues. Be delighted to talk to you a little just by way of context and intro to the report, and then I'm sure I and my colleagues will gladly answer any questions you might have. So if I can just start with a brief reminder. Excuse me. So the police department, as you know it now, of course, only really came into existence in 2017. So the programme for improvement and change that was set by members back in January 2018 was in many respects about trying to build a culture and an approach and a way of designing and delivering improvement and change in a department that perhaps didn't have the kind of heritage or history that some of our other departments, like say adults or children's, will have had. And I think you can see that from the kind of improvement and change programs that we put in place when we set that strategy 3 years ago or 4 years ago. So I'll touch briefly on some of the examples that stand out for me from within the 3 programs that we've delivered. And of course, the report touches on those and some others as well. So given that context, it's perhaps not a surprise that the first of our programs was looking at our own internal journey of improvement. And that was very much a recognition that we were needing to build a new leadership culture within the organisation or within the department. We were needing to try and set the foundations for us to work as one cohesive department, having brought in functions and services from other parts of the organisation. And then critically for that department to then be able to work in collaboration with the rest of the council and indeed the wider partnership. But it was also important that we stamped a set of values and behaviours on that department. And I know from some of the early engagement we had with you as a committee, and particularly from the administration, there was a very strong desire to see us do much more in the space around innovation, in creativity, and to kind of have some courage to go out and do a few things that were a bit different to the kind of services that we might have done in the past. And you can see that in the report, but there are a number of examples that really leap out of where we've done that well. I remember, Councillor Adair, in particular, you challenged me to up our game on things like digital and get involved in a lot of the new technologies. And so, of course, now we're very proud and privileged that we've got a world first being created, designed, built and delivered in Nottinghamshire with our Connected Forest, our 5G programme, £10 million programme that will be landing later this year. But of course, we also stepped outside some of the norms and the traditional programmes. So notwithstanding we're not a housing authority, we have stepped into the place of winning funds from government on a range of different housing initiatives. And we knew that fuel poverty was an issue and impacted on outcomes for vulnerable adults. And so we went out and we bid, and we've been successful in a £4.5 million Warm Homes Fund programme that's well into delivery now. Just an example of how the department not only being a bit more creative and innovative, but also reaching out to try and help other parts of the organisation achieve outcomes. And we've got a great many examples as well of where we've worked alongside colleagues in children's and adults in particular. And some of the work on health, skills and employment really leap out for me, either through the way that we've used our apprenticeship levy in very new and different ways, working with colleagues in HR and Futures, adults and children's to deliver new programmes. One such initiative we set up earlier this year has already had 42 applications, and I think 34 of which have been approved across 21 different businesses. That's us using our levy in new and different ways. Again, huge outcomes for those children, young people in particular, who are benefiting from those. If I turn and look to that second strand of work around investment and commercial return, I do just want to dwell briefly on the property transformation programme. Whilst I don't want to dwell on all of the history and the issues that we found in that group of services, it's fair to say that when we first came to you as a committee, and indeed to policy committee to secure approvals to start that work, the property service wasn't one that we were most proud of, if I can put it that way. But if you look at where we are now, with that programme having been closed down, across the whole of the property system, whether it's about the way that we plan and prepare our plan maintenance, or it's the way that we manage our vacant properties, or whether it's the way that we manage our pipeline of disposals, or the way we work leases and keep those renewed so that we're safeguarding the assets for County Council and our taxpayers ultimately. I think across the board there, we've seen huge improvements from strategy through to delivery. I think that stands out as a real example of success for us in terms of the programme of improvement and change. But also, it was always going to be the case that we needed to generate increasing commercial returns and investment. And we've provided regular reports through to Communities in Place Committee, and Councillor Cotty has seen the growth in income, particularly through services like trading standards. And that's largely been achieved by us being a credible and reliable partner for business, not just in our economic development world, but across the board. And if you look at the feedback we get from some of our prime partners, they take real confidence from working with our trading standards colleagues. But it's also worth recognising that through the work we've been able to do on commercial returns, not only do we host a regional team on behalf of national agencies, but we have one of the biggest trading standards services in the country, yet we cost one of the lowest to the taxpayer. And that's largely because of the amount of income that we're able to leverage and bring in to the service. But it isn't just about the money. They generate great outcomes too, whether that's in protecting and supporting vulnerable households, tackling scams, working to test and make sure that things like PPE that's been on sale meet the relevant standards. And of course, we've got a number of very high profile cases and successful prosecutions where we've had to take enforcement action. Let me look briefly then at the third of our three strands, all around doing things differently. And we wanted to make sure that we were clear in that programme that we wanted to not only achieve outcomes as a department and achieve those priorities that mattered most to you as the elected politicians, but also to our residents and businesses. But we also wanted to do that in a way that either cost our taxpayer less, or used as much money, as much of other people's money as was possible. And we've got some great examples. I know we've reported to your committee before, Councillor Adair, and indeed to policy, about the work we do with the ARC partnership. But of course, that's been a great example of how we've used investment in one part of the department to achieve outcomes in the others, most notably around investment in property maintenance and refurbishment, working that supply chain that ARC have really hard to make sure that local businesses benefit. And I think now ARC are at the point where their framework of suppliers, 86% of those are local SMEs, and depending on which programme you look at, between 80 and 90% of spend is with local suppliers. So that's a fantastic example of, you know, us doing the things that we normally need to do, but in a way that achieves a kind of multiplicity of outcomes. If I want to just kind of cast my eye around the rest of the department, I could pick up many examples, whether it was the way we use LEP money for our growth hub to help local businesses. I think nearly 400 local businesses we've helped just during the pandemic alone in a direct sense. Or I could look at the way that we've leveraged external money for flood risk management. I could look at the way that through the green agenda, we would set the challenge in the environment strategy of tree planting. Well, we're one of 10 national programmes now through the Trees for Climate programme, and our share of that national pot is just over £4 million to invest in tree planting. Some 250,000 trees will be planted over the next 7 years as a result of that work. But if I may, Chair, just to wrap up, I want to touch on two things which weren't in the plan, but I think we've been able to do successfully because of the work we did, particularly in that first programme of work in terms of our internal journey of improvement. And both of these are COVID-related programmes of work. The first around the community hub, but the second around our economic recovery. It's fair to say that in just about this time last year, as the pandemic was really hitting the county, we were able to pretty much build overnight the infrastructure and architecture for our community hub, with excellent work from our colleagues in ICT, fantastic work from our colleagues in the customer service centre. But the way that the teams across the police department stepped up to think differently about how they could work with voluntary and community sector organisations, district and borough partners, town and parish council, I think it's been a phenomenal story of success. And for me, a lot of the underpinnings for that programme, you can trace back through all of the things that we've done through our programme of internal improvement. And then lastly, on the economic recovery plan, again, I would reflect on the amount of projects or programmes that we had in our pipeline when we first came together as a department, particularly around large capital programmes. But of course, when the Recovery, Resilience and Renewal Committee set us the challenge in July of putting an economic recovery plan in place by September, I was really proud to see members back that unanimously in September, and even more proud to see that we're now up to in excess of £14 million of additional external investment that we've been able to bring into the county to help deliver that economic recovery plan, which again, you can trace back all the way through those 3 programmes of work that we've delivered over the last 4 years. So hopefully this is a helpful point at which to bring my introduction to a close and demonstrates that the improvement and change heritage is started to be growing, to grow and develop within the police department, as it does indeed in the others. I'll close there, Councillor Dare, with we do have apologies from Matt Neal, who I'm afraid is suffering a little with the after effects of having had his jab yesterday. But if members have questions, I'm sure Derek and I will step in and do our best to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian. Thanks for that comprehensive report of what you've been doing over the last 3 years. At that, I'll just go to the recommendation on page 4 of the agenda, that the Improvement and Change Subcommittee considers the progress against the police improvement and change portfolio outlined in the report and recommends whether any actions are required in relation to the detail of the report. So I formally move the recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I'll second it. Councillor Adair, Councillor Cotty.
Okay, thanks, John. So that's seconded, and then I first hand up I see is Kate.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adrian, for that and for the really hard and creative work. And things clearly have got better. So thank you for you and your team for that. Just a couple of things in terms of actions and further development. I think you're absolutely right about the community hub. It was done swiftly and it was done well. The work, you didn't get absolutely everything right. I think you accept that, don't you, really? But a lot of it you did. So thank you for that. What I would be really interested in, I know there has been talks and some consideration given to this, is actually how we can actually embed that now. That community response is something that probably should have been there before, I don't know. But now it is there and it's up and it's working, and you have these real connections with voluntary and community groups and other groups. It would be really good to see how that could be further developed post-COVID, because I think it could be really valuable and it could really enable us to provide a better first response and intuitive service for our residents. So I think that's something that's, in terms of actions, if you're asking for actions, I think that's something that, you know, when you further report on this, actually would be really interested to see. The other thing I just wanted to ask, and this is a question, this is paragraph 10. And I think, again, Trading Standards have done a terrific job. They really have. So my thanks to them again. But halfway down the paragraph, it says the service has also been able to form 2 new primary authority partnerships. What are they?
Is that it, Kate? Thank you. Diane, would you like to put your questions, please? Diane.
Thank you, Reg. Yes, I've got it. It just takes me a while to do the clicking of things.
Sorry, I know it's Monday morning. It's a bit difficult to wake up, but never mind.
Thank you, Adrian. That's a really excellent report and really good to have that kind of overview of what's been happening. You know, we've had little bits of it, but it's a really good news story. I'm afraid I'm still going to go back to something that I've been asking about quite a bit, which is in the Investing in Nottinghamshire programme and the development of new offices within Hucknall. Now, I understand that they're going to house the people that are currently in the premises at Annesley, the call centre premises in Annesley, which you currently hire. And I think that's great. I think that makes a lot of sense to have people located in offices that we own rather than offices that we pay rent on. But I see that later on in the report that the planning application has been delayed for this. I understand not for anything for reasons, for our reasons. It's the planning authority that hasn't been able to process it yet. And so I just have 2 questions. One is, are we going to be occupying the whole of the site? And I can see that this is the other thing I wanted to say was, you know, this is an excellent BREEAM building, so it is, you know, a class of its own. It's an exemplar building, but I'm just wondering whether we should be building to the size that was initially planned, given that we actually need a lot less offices. You know, is this time to take a pause and actually relook at the building, given that it's not yet gone through the planning process?
Okay, thank you, Diane. Jim, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Just something a little bit more simple, just on item 15/16 on the environmental and the closing of the 2 buildings removal. On our environmental impact, when we actually are reporting it, will we be reporting it minus those 2 buildings in the future plus? It's just for the statistics. You're getting one big jump in our environment. Our carbon impact has reduced massively, but we're not in 2 buildings. So I'm just wanting on keeping the actual statistics, and that we are still moving forward positively, that we don't use that sudden jump to just sit back a little bit. So it's just on the reporting of it, basically, and how it will be reported and how we will still move forward on our carbon reduction. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor David Martin. David, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously, I'm reiterating what Councillor Mills already said. Are we going to have a review of the commercial restructure of property services going forward as a result of the impacts of COVID?
Okay, any other questions from any other members? If not, would you like to respond, Adrian and Derek, whichever way you want to do it? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, members, for those questions. Try and work through a few of them. So firstly, Councillor Fole, in terms of what next on the community hub, I think members of this committee have received in our regular transformation updates a short description of a programme that we are looking to bring forward around early intervention and prevention. My expectation would be that would be the home for the community hub going forward, because it brings all of the wealth of the capacity of the voluntary and community sector to bear on helping communities and places to be resilient. And clearly, that early intervention prevention programme will be looking to build on and leverage those partnerships going forward. I think it's also something that's been raised at the 3Rs committee, that we're looking to bring forward a framework for recovery from COVID, which will look to the kind of short to medium term recovery for communities. And again, we'll need to be setting out the next steps for embedding what we've learned and developed and created through the Community Hub within that recovery framework. So I think, as you say, there's a real set of assets there now that we didn't have at our disposal perhaps 2 or 3 years ago, that we can now use, particularly with the kind of data and the technology that we've got that underpins the hub. Now it's about making sure we embed those in our models of transformation and delivery going forward. Both of those things I'm hopeful are underway. Primary authority partnerships, they're ways of businesses having a prime relationship directly with an enforcement body, so in our case, trading standards. We've got them with some commercial providers. We're happy to share some of the detail of those, although I probably wouldn't do it on a YouTube channel. But we for one in particular, we've been shortlisted and commended nationally for the strength of our primary authority partnership. And perhaps colleagues can give you a separate briefing if you'd like to know more. In terms of the comments that we had both from Councillor Meal and Councillor Martin around investing in knots and property, we've, as you say, the planning application is due to be heard at Gedling Borough Council, I think on the 30th or 31st of this month, which unfortunately slips our timescale back a little for submitting for planning for our own officers. We have been reviewing the size and scale of the accommodation that's required to make sure we consider the impact that COVID has had. But of course, what we're also needing to take into account is the extent to which services and officers will still need to have space to come together and work. We had a really good conversation earlier this week about the number of newly qualified social workers, for example, who have joined the council over the last year. And of course, they have higher levels of supervision that are required. And whilst the digital media provides an awful lot of opportunities for us, it can't replace that one-to-one type engagement that you need for supervision, particularly in those high stress, high demand roles like social work, or of course in operating our multi-agency safeguarding hub, the MASH, which of course operates out of the building you refer to. So you'll remember that at policy committee recently, when we took an update and a set of proposals to move that programme forward, we did also get funds and permission to undertake some feasibility work to look at how any residual space across our estate could be used to, for example, provide SME accommodation or workspace. This might be one of those buildings that could accommodate that, but we need to do the work in order to assess that before we move on. But I referred to in my introduction the work around the property transformation programme. If you look at the turbine, our managed workspace up in Worksop, that's a phenomenal example of success, and the local authority has a really excellent model now of delivering those kinds of services and managed workspace to small and growing businesses. And I think if there are opportunities for us to re-provide those in other part of the county, where there's demand for it, of course, then if that feasibility study comes back, we'll no doubt be bringing those proposals forward for members to consider in due course. And Councillor Martin, I think that therefore picks up on your point that we keep all of these things under review and we bring them back for members to shape and influence as we go forward. And Councillor Creamer, we're not intending to pull any tricks with carbon reporting. I know you've got smarter working and other items on your agenda, and Phil Cooper, who will be listening intently to this part of the conversation, will testify that I regularly give him a thoroughly hard time about the level of detail and rigour that we have in terms of measuring the carbon reductions that we can achieve by not only making the rationalisation of our offices through investing in Nottinghamshire, but also by the use of the new technologies, whether that's ground or air source heat pumps or PVs that we're increasingly bringing into the office estate. We want to be able to measure that and evidence that for you, and you'll be able to see hopefully the reducing trend over time. Hopefully, Councillor Adair, that covers the questions I was asked, but happy to elaborate further on any other areas.
Okay, thank you. Does Derek want to add anything? No?
No, thank you, Chair.
No, okay. All right, thank you very much. So no other comments from any of the rest of the team. Thank you very much. So on that then, can we go to the vote, please? And I think, Keith, you're doing that, aren't you?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to read out the members' names. As with previous meetings, please note that the individual votes today will not be recorded in the minutes of the meeting unless two or members requested, in line with the usual recorded vote arrangements. So starting with the Chair, Councillor Reg Adair.
4.
Councillor John Cotty.
4.
Councillor Jim Creamer.
4.
Councillor Kate Fall.
4.
Councillor Tony Harbour.
4.
Councillor Richard Jackson.
4.
Councillor David Martin.
4.
Councillor Diana Meal.
4.
And Councillor Philip Owen.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried 9 votes unanimous.
You muted, Reg.
Oh, I'm back again. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Blanked myself out. Anyhow, we're back again now. We're in business again. So yeah, agenda item 5, new smarter working vision for the county council, and sort of take that. And I think Matt Neal's not with us, but I think Derek's going to do it. Is that right? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Just a very brief introduction from me to this paper. You'll see from it that it's accompanied by a presentation, and as Adrian mentioned a couple of minutes ago, our colleague Phil, who's been leading much of our work on smarter working, is going to just walk members through a brief presentation, the purpose of which I think is really to bring to life the vision that's outlined in the report for smarter working, and that's also been considered previously by Policy Committee, and we thought it would be appropriate for members of this committee just to consider perhaps a little in a little bit more depth than has been the opportunity elsewhere what that smarter working vision looks like from an officer's and office perspective, and also for us to talk a little bit about how COVID, along with the many challenges that it's presented, has also opened up a little bit of an opportunity for us, along with many other organisations, to move a little bit more quickly than perhaps we'd previously anticipated on that kind of modernisation of the office environment and that modernisation of our approach to working in a public sector context. So Phil will just walk us through a few slides, including a fly-through of an office of the future from the County Council's perspective that hopefully will give you a kind of fresh insight and a real world insight into how we think things are changing and will change. From our perspective, these developments are really positive and offer lots of opportunities for us to become both more effective and more efficient. That said, they're not without their challenges as well, particularly from a kind of workforce and almost a kind of organisational culture perspective, because not every officer is able to move as quickly as others are in terms of how they think about their work and their approach to their work. So those are things that we're working to deal with as well, to ensure that everybody who works for the County Council can become comfortable in the world of work as it changes. I'll stop there. I'll hand over to Phil. Phil will take about 10 minutes to give the presentation, and then obviously we can pick up on any questions or comments that members may have. Phil.
Thank you, Derek. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Good morning, councillors. I'm just going to pull up the presentation. So this is a true test of smarter working. There we go. Hopefully that's just loading into your screens at the moment. So yeah, I'll just continue from what Derek has just said. I mean, the council has got an excellent reputation, a successful reputation in delivering flexible ways of working for our staff. And this vision is the next evolution of smarter working that's largely been pushed forward as a result of those new ways of working, those benefits that we've seen over the past 12 months. And we've been talking quite a lot to our staff and our managers and our frontline staff over the past 12 months. We've had countless numbers of meetings, surveys that have gone out, and we've got another survey that's planned, and that engagement will continue over the forthcoming period. But there are some key points that have been fed back to us in the programme that we're now taking account of in our next evolution of smarter working. So there is this changing emphasis to working from home more than we've ever have done, and that was of course forced upon us in the past 12 months. But that leads us down to the position where actually there will be more working from home moving forward. Staff actually have seen some huge benefits. Well, not everybody, but a lot of staff have seen huge benefits from working from home, particularly around their work-life balance. So we're more confident now that our working from home culture has been embedded further than it ever has done across the council. And similar to what Derek said, we've got to acknowledge that isn't necessarily right for everybody. And our office space needs to take account of those and take account of those differing situations that staff find themselves in moving forward. And of course, for those who do want the flexibility to work from home more in the future, we need to make sure that they can do that in a safe way and in a safe environment at home as well. So the council's physical workspace will need to adapt. And there are many new ways that we're looking at doing that in terms of our workspace, and the fly-through that Derek's mentioned will hopefully bring that to life a little bit more once I get to that in a few minutes. But it is that blend of physical and virtual worlds that we're looking to implement now. Desk areas will be there for those that require them, but there'll certainly be an increase in meeting space and collaboration space and space for colleagues to come together and get that vital support that they will need and that team time that they need. And that will be supported through technology. And we've got a technology work stream that a number of colleagues are involved in, with the view being that will increase the ability that we have to have that blended model across both our office state for staff that wish to be in the office and staff actually who, like ourselves, many of us now are actually continuing to work from home. So there's things there around our meeting spaces being digitalised, printing being available across multiple areas and multiple buildings, space booking systems, digitalisation of our records and our processes. So there's a lot of work that we're currently working through as a service. And these are the things, these are the summaries, these are the points that staff have told us. So we've started to build that in to our new vision moving forward. And the County Council is a forward-thinking organisation and will continue to be a forward-thinking organisation. It will offer that blended working model of part home, part office, those hybrid workspaces, enabling that to happen. That will mean there will be a reduced seat ratio in offices to take account of those additional collaboration spaces and less reliance upon the desks. But actually, it will also give us the opportunity to look at things differently. And like I've said from the start, is to take account of some of those benefits that we've seen over the past 12 months. Smarter working is based upon three work streams: people, technology, and workspace. I'll just give you a brief update on those. So people, yes, it's a flexible working environment that we're looking to offer. We want to allow managers to manage with confidence. It's not without challenge managing remote teams at times. So again, that ability to bring staff together as and when is required is important. And then the training and the support that needs to go alongside that. We're also looking at our office environments in terms of staff wellbeing and how the office environment and that virtual environment can help well-being of our staff, who many of whom have gone through obviously very difficult circumstances, as we all have over the past 12 months or so. The technology, so touching upon what I've already mentioned, that hybrid workspace, meeting room technology, electronic booking systems, digitalisation of our records, we've built all of that into the programme moving forward. And our workspace will adapt. Those 4 to 10 seat ratios, the well-being, quiet spaces, different spaces for different tasks is how we like to talk about it within the team. And alongside that, we're not losing sight of the fact that a lot of our office spaces also deliver and have requirements for public meetings. So we're re-looking at the requirements for those alongside our partners in the services. Next steps. So we're going to continue to engage with staff across all departments. So the changes will definitely be made with them, not to them. And there'll be an agreement on the type of space that they would like to see within the offices. So we don't have a one size fits all here. We've got lots of different options, and it's about choosing the right spaces that will work for those services. We're working through some implementation planning at the moment, and how that vision fits within the current council estate and the sequence of our implementation. And we're doing that alongside colleagues in the Workforce Recovery and Resilience Group and Property Recovery Groups, in terms of looking at our, not just our home working offer and our internal office space, but actually when we reoccupy and how we reoccupy our estate moving forward. And then ultimately, once we've got agreement on that over the next few weeks, we'll set to delivering this vision across the estate. Which tees me in nicely. I'm going to stop presenting, and hopefully I'm going to be able to share an artistic impression, as we call it, a fly through. And hopefully the technology doesn't let me down. Hopefully you can all see that. I'm just going to press play. So again, you can see the meeting rooms all have technology built into them. You can see Teams calls happening alongside staff within an office. We can create large meeting spaces, training spaces. And even our smaller meeting rooms, we're looking to have some element of technology built within them to again enable that hybrid working across home and the office environment. I talked about well-being. One thing we've learned from research is actually the green environment that we build into office spaces helps with well-being of staff. So again, different spaces for different tasks, high-rise bars, high-level tables, separate meeting pods, so you can see we're no longer confined by the walls that we have within our estates. We can create them ourselves. Perhaps some of the sofas and pods that you'll recognise from around the estate currently as well. Just to reiterate, we won't actually be we're putting all of these into a very small workspace. It's a choice alongside the services as to which ones will suit. So if that was the more future view and some of the different workspaces we can place into offices, it's about to fly into perhaps the more traditional which is where we've been previously, with the desks and the double screens and the lockers. So again, offering that blend between the two, acknowledging that different people need different ways of working. Privacy cells, confidential booths are something that have been fed back to us quite often. That's one of the things that's quite common feedback with open plan officers, having that ability to move away off the floor to go and have a confidential conversation. And again, you'll see a meeting room here, Teams call going on the screens, showing that blended virtual working. Thank you. That's me done. Hopefully that's given you an insight into the future of where we're hoping to push forward with smarter working.
Thanks, Phil. It's really helpful presentation and expertly delivered. Thank you for that. I should just reiterate to members that we do envisage that our flexible working spaces will actually have roofs as well in the future, just to be absolutely clear about that. And on that note, happy to pick up on any questions or comments that members may have, either on the report or the presentation itself.
Good, thanks, Derek. Thanks, Phil. So the recommendation is on page 14 of the agenda pack, as that the subcommittee considers whether there are any actions arising from the report, that the subcommittee agree to receive an updated report within the next 6 months, and that this be included in the work programme. So that is the formally move the recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please?
So I'm happy to second it, Councillor Adair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then, so I'm going to move now on. I've got Richard Jackson. Just keep your hands up for a minute. Richard Jackson, you want to come in, Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's a question about timing, really, because, you know, we're coming to the end of this emergency, hopefully at least. And what we don't want to see is a kind of gradual creep back to exactly how we were before, and then we might have resistance to moving on to the ways of working that you've just talked about. So how can we make sure that doesn't happen, and how quickly can you be putting some of these things into practice?
Okay, that's Richard. Philip, you got a question?
Yeah, well, I've got one or two questions and a comment. I suppose I'm going to tackle it from a slightly different, or almost the opposite side from Councillor Jackson. What we saw was quite exciting and almost revolutionary, really, from the way that we have worked. But I think there needs to always be borne in mind, and this was alluded to in the previous item on the agenda, that there are going to be sections of staff that will need to be working together on a much more regular basis than others. And I'm thinking in particular of children's social workers, where we've got a significant number of new social workers, and you know that really is very, very positive news. But it's a sort of job where a lot of learning has to take place, and does take place, from contact and relationships with, that's the wrong word to use, interrelationships, professional relationships with more senior and experienced members of staff. And I wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think in this drive to, which I can understand, to home working, if you like, I do want that to be retained, and I think it's vitally important for the delivery of effective services. Another point that I would just make in this blended working environment, what are we going to do about home assessments of suitability of working spaces at home? I remember when we were first given, or we were first able to do a lot of work, or much more work, on computers, a county council officer came out to make sure that I'd got the right sort of chair to sit in. Now, I know that seemed a bit silly at the time, but I know with health and safety regulations as they are now, that the county council potentially could be liable if we were all working with unsuitable equipment in terms of furniture. And I know it may seem a minor point, but I do think that's something to be borne in mind. And one last point, Chairman. One of the difficulties that I've experienced, and I don't know whether other members or other officers have experienced, is actually contacting staff by telephone if you want to. The telephone is by no means redundant, and it's often easier and better to pick up the phone and be able to talk to a member of staff rather than try and put it down in a long and intricate email. And I have to say there have been occasions, or more than occasions, fairly regularly, when the ability to phone in and to be passed on to somebody has been lacking. And I do think this needs a complete review and a complete overhaul, so that there is a system available whereby you can actually contact members of staff by telephone. And can I just advise that I shall not be perching on anything, looking at the perch and connect. My perching days are over. And that's one reason why I don't go on to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, because I'd never get up into the seed. So forget about perching for councillors, please.
Right, thanks, Philip. Jim.
Thank you, Chair. It's a more simple one. The actual office space looks, without being too prescriptive, looks very much like what they actually got at Loxley House anyway. But my actual question is, you've got quiet areas, and that's great. But do we have will we be having privacy areas as well for people who need to do medical things when they come, like diabetes, injection? So it's not just a toilet for doing these private things that people have to do when they're actually at work. I mean, we've got certain places where they can rest, but in this one, are we making sure we've got privacy areas so that people who need to do certain things medically can do them? Simple as that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jim. Can I have David Martin? You there, David?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. I watched the Smarter Working programme the first round, and it was excellent, and it increased the output and the lives of the staff greatly. And we had an output increase of 25% in adult health and social care cases. We need that because of the population expansion, and this is apt timing to be looking at the layout of buildings when we come out of COVID, because obviously we are going to be working in a different way, quite as Councillor Jackson alludes to, but we don't want to go quite back to where we were before. So this is a very good programme. I'm interested in it, and it was a great success last time, and I can see it being a success this time, because we're looking at all the nuances that suit all of the people that use the building, and I think that can only be good.
Thanks, David. Kate.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it looked very exciting. Just one or 2 points. I think in terms of home working, clearly it is about things like chairs and stuff, but it's also about the reliability of the hardware and the software that you have, and that's something that, and I certainly some members have struggled with. So I think, again, in terms of suitability, I think, it's across the board, isn't it? You need to be able to function as a home office, both physically and in terms of kind of the internet and all those kind of extra things. Another thing I wanted to ask was, there's a sentence in there which I thought was great, which said changes are going to be made with staff, not to them. And I wonder what is happening in terms of both broad consultation with staff, because clearly there's going to be a continuing change in organisational culture to make sure this happens and it works, and the programme's actually working. So of course that will happen on an individual and a team basis, but also more broadly as well. How are you going to make sure that you're taking staff with you and you're actually doing things that are going to enable them to work in a safe and appropriate way, that suits them as well as kind of suits the organisation? The other thing as well is, I thought that presentation was wonderful. I mean, I quite like the idea of working outside, to be honest with you, Derek, but there you go. Because if it's raining, you're a bit stuffed, aren't you? We'll give everybody umbrellas, I guess. But I just wonder, all buildings won't be suitable for that kind of wonderful setup, will they? I'm just thinking of County Hall. I mean, I just wonder to what extent the buildings are suitable and are flexible enough to accommodate all those kind of really exciting looking new ways of working, really. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, I really enjoyed that fly through. That's a really good way of seeing things, and it's really good to see the county at the forefront of this, because it is the way forward, and it will be the new norm. Several of the questions I was going to ask have already been asked by others, so I don't want to repeat myself. But what is the risk management policy of enough seats and desks should all the staff suddenly want to come in at once? Have you built that into it? So if say an unlikely occurrence, everybody wants to come in, will there be enough desks and chairs, or is it reliant upon a lot of people working from home? And just to reinforce the comment about the switchboard and being able to get to speak to people, I think it was Councillor Owen that said it. It is really important that should we wish to speak to someone, that is very easy and we're not just sent round different menus. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks all. Any other members want to make a comment? No. Okay, then Derek, would you like to sum up with?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll pick up on those questions, and Phil, feel free to add any additional detail by all means. I'll take them in the order that they came. So, Councillor Jackson, you asked around questions around timing and kind of reoccupation, really around, I suppose, not wanting to take steps backwards in order to move forward. What we're currently doing is already communicating with staff about the potential, and we try not to use the word reoccupation of offices, actually, because that of course implies going back to the way that we did things pre-COVID, but about how we can sort of reoccupy our offices in a way that fits with the vision that we've outlined in the report and that Phil outlined. And so we're already starting to work on delivering that vision in some of our key office locations over the coming months, including at County Hall and in some of our big office spaces as well. So that the plan is that we engage and communicate with staff so that by the time we get to the other side of the summer, which is where things as a current forecasting will be back to normal, the new normal, then we're in a space where we can start to implement those desk ratios that Phil has been talking about in such a way that it isn't impacting negatively upon the services that the County Council are delivering, or the kind of day-to-day activities of staff. So a big part of that will be around communication and clarity with staff about what they can expect when they do start to come back to our office spaces. It's worth saying, of course, as well, that for many staff, the last 12 months have actually seen many colleagues continue to work in the way that they always have done, because lots of our staff aren't office based and are mobile or work in very different settings than offices. And so for many of them, it is literally going to be business as usual, because they have a range of different jobs and functions. Councillor Owen, you asked around the need for us to kind of reflect and respect the needs, in particular of the children's social work workforce, and we'd absolutely agree with that. That particular workforce needs additional time, space and opportunity to meet on a face-to-face basis, both to discuss cases, but also to provide professional support, encouragement, supervision, and a kind of listening spaces as well for staff in really challenging face-to-face roles. And as a practical example of that, we're currently undertaking a piece of ongoing engagement and consultation with colleagues in children's services in particular about the work that we're doing at Sir John Robinson House to modernise the accommodation there. That's a key point of occupation and management for children's colleagues, particularly around the assessment team, I think it is, in children's, which is based there. So we're doing a lot of work there to ensure that the new arrangements will both deliver on our smarter working principles, but also offer appropriate space an opportunity for support for our children's social work colleagues. We're absolutely clear that what we can't afford to do is to prejudice our kind of operational delivery in pursuit of the principles. That is not the purpose of them. You asked a question then around kind of working from home and risk assessments around working from home as well. That's something that we've picked up on, as you might expect, over the last year, and every member of staff has been offered the opportunity to have a conversation with their line manager about risk assessments from a working from home perspective, and that gives us then the opportunity at a corporate level to ensure that they're supplied with appropriate equipment, appropriate kit, and also appropriate advice and support as well, because it isn't all about equipment from a working from home perspective. There's lots of other factors as well, particularly that kind of interface that many of us will be familiar with by now, with between our home life and our work life and family and so on. So we anticipate and envisage that that process will continue. We are giving some thought at the moment, though, to how we might ensure that from a resources perspective, corporately, we think about how we might resource differently the kind of working from home requirements that staff will have in the future, given that we're now anticipating that it's going to be, for many staff, not all, a kind of permanent feature of that blended working arrangement that Phil outlined. And I think Councillor Owen and Councillor Harper as well, you made that point about telephone contact. And of course, I think that's something that we need to just take away and have a think about, particularly from a member perspective, because we need to ensure that you can contact the offices in the way that you want to, when you want to. And if you're experiencing some issues around that, then that's something that we'll pick up upon and come back to you on. Councillor Creamer, you asked around privacy for staff in terms of those with particular medical needs, for example, and I think that's again is a really good challenge for us. To a certain extent, we're constrained by some of our buildings. I think another colleague asked a question around that. But one of the things, and I think it's a challenge for us in terms of delivering on our smarter working principles, one of the things that we need to do is to think about how we can ensure that our spaces work for everybody. And we're absolutely aware of the need to ensure that colleagues with different abilities are catered for effectively within our workspaces. And one of the things that we're looking at, for example, in terms of some of the bigger pieces of work we're doing around office refurbishments through the Investing in Knots programme is changing spaces in some of our larger buildings. Now, our space constraints mean that's not going to be possible everywhere, but in buildings like County Hall, for example, it's certainly something that we could be countenancing. They're not without cost, but they do have a significant payoff in terms of accessibility, both for staff and also, I think, critically for visitors to our buildings as well. So it's something that we're aware of, we're on with, but we will face some different challenges in different buildings. Councillor Fole, you asked about the question of reliability around kit and connections. I think that's probably a question that we've all asked from time to time, depending upon how our day is going. But one of the things that we are looking for, and it's an active debate for us at the moment, is we're starting to think about investment in teleconferencing arrangements that work in a more hybrid setting. So at the moment, none of us are in the same room on this call, or most of us aren't. We're all in a variety of different locations. In the hybrid model that Phil outlined a few minutes ago, it's likely that in the future some of us will be in the one room, and some of us may still choose to be available on the call. As we start to invest in equipment that makes that a much easier meeting to handle from a chair's perspective and from a participant's perspective, a much easier meeting to engage with, we are actively weighing up the question of, do we buy middle of the range equipment, or do we think about going towards equipment that's going to perhaps be more future proof, more expensive, but more robust as well? And I think for us as a council, that's a critical consideration. So often the pressure on us is to buy at a cheap level for obvious financial reasons. We have to consider the kind of trade-off between cost, robustness, reliability and effectiveness. And I think that's something that we're increasingly aware of, particularly as we start to rely on equipment even more than we do at the moment. And you asked the question, Councillor Fowle, around how we're going to continue to engage with staff. My take on that would be, and it's something you might want to comment on, Phil, that a big feature of all of our smarter working activity thus far has been active engagement with staff. It's been critical to us in all the various phases of the programme so far, that as well as hitting the principles and the kind of targets that we want to meet from a smarter working perspective, we provide workspaces that work for staff, because if we aren't doing that, then we're simply not succeeding in delivering smarter working. We're just creating different working spaces. So we've always employed a range of different measures to engage with staff, including meeting with individual members of staff, team managers, teams themselves, services, and senior managers, so that we can, to a certain extent, provide a little bit of challenge, because some staff groups have been quite conservative over the years in terms of their approach to different ways of working, but also critically support as we start to move towards those new ways. I envisage that kind of approach will absolutely continue. And it goes back to the points that Councillor Owen was making around needing to respect the different needs of different parts of our workforce. I think we've got a strong track record there, and I'm very confident that will continue. And will all buildings be suitable, I think was the other question you asked, Councillor Fowle. It's a really good question. Some buildings are definitely more suitable than others. Phil's presentation absolutely outlined kind of everything in one idealized setting. Our larger buildings are much more suitable to be able to kind of flex and move around. So County Hall, for example, actually, despite its age, is a very flexible space, because it's so open plan in most parts of it, so that we can achieve what we'd like to achieve more easily there than in other locations. The challenges at County Hall are more around its infrastructure than its space, if you like. In our smaller office buildings, I think that's going to be where we face some of more specific challenges. Can we get the balance right between desks, open space, kind of social meeting space, but also the confidential spaces that particularly our social care workforce have, because of course the mix of office-based staff and delivery staff changes in different buildings around the county as well, and that's something that we're acutely aware of too. So every building won't look the same. It will have some similar characteristics, but it will reflect the needs of the workforce in that particular area. And the further out from Nottingham and County Hall we get, the more direct delivery staff that we have. And Councillor Harper, the last question then I think was around, what if everybody comes in on the same day? Well, if everybody does, there won't be a desk for everybody, because that's the kind of outcome of our smarter working approach. The challenge for us is to ensure that we're in a situation where we can manage the flows of staff in and out of our buildings, and the flows of staff from a team and a service perspective, so that kind of scenario doesn't come to pass. We are absolutely are confident, and we've based our modelling on lots of experience over the years as we've moved down from initial desk ratios of 8 to 10 to 7 to 10 to 6 to 10, that we can ensure that service delivery will continue, and that staff won't be faced with that, that awful moment when you open the door and there's nowhere to sit and you can't do your work. We've had very, very little of that over the years. We're confident that this next change will enable us to continue to ensure that we don't face that scenario, and that the other I suppose response to that would be around many of the more open plan spaces, and the equipment that we're providing with staff means that even if there isn't a desk for a colleague, there is a space for them to work from, and they're equipped with the necessary equipment and technology to enable them to work pretty much anywhere and at any time as well. And I think that's the other kind of insulating factor against that risk of colleagues not being able to do their job, if you like. I think I've picked up on all of the questions that members have had. Phil, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add from your perspective.
Thanks, Derek. Yeah, just one thing, just going back to the engagement question, actually, because it was myself and a few colleagues that did the vast majority of the engagement in the previous Smarter Working programme. And what we found that was key was that contact time, was going to team meetings, providing the same message to every single team, every single member of staff, but actually giving them the opportunity to feedback and say, not sure that'll work for us for X, Y, and Z reason, and for us to have that two-way conversation between ourselves as a program team and our staff who will be living and breathing this day in, day out themselves on the other end of it. So, and we envisage continuing doing that as we have done throughout the years.
Is that it, Derek and Phil?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Anybody else, officer-wise, want to add anything? It doesn't seem like it. So hopefully we've had a comprehensive review of that, and I think a lot of tech age of the future more than the present, which is going to be exciting for those that are going to live through it. So having said that, now we will go to the vote. So can we have the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. So starting with Councillor Roger Day.
For.
Councillor John Cotty.
For.
Councillor Jim Creamer.
For.
Councillor Kate Fall.
For.
Councillor Tony Harper.
For.
Councillor Richard Jackson.
For.
Councillor David Martin.
For.
Councillor Diana Meal.
For.
And Councillor Philip Owen.
For.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, carried unanimously.
Thank you, Keith. Thanks for that. So then, with having taken that one, we move on to agenda item 6, transformation and change and performance intelligence and policy teams restructure. And I think this is re-leveling and setting the foundations for the future in the digital economy. So we need to take that on board. So who's going to take us through that? Is it Sue who's going to take us through that? Sue, wherever you are, please.
I hope you can see me, Councillor Adair. Thank you. So as you'll be aware, we've been on this journey for a little while. We've been through various reports at subcommittee in July, September and November of last year, where we've established and agreed that ambitious forward-facing corporate approach to transformation and change. We've also agreed those 4 cross-cutting council programmes and the underpinning strands of work, and also those high-level staffing structures in November 2020. So since then, the senior posts have been appointed to, and we've been through a consultation on the proposed full team structures, obviously engaging with the relevant trade unions, and the feedback from that consultation has been really helpful in terms of the way we're going forward. Having said all of that, clearly there are some concerns for staff in terms of grading and positions going forward, so we're very mindful of that at the moment. The other element to note is that some elements of what was part of the transformation and change team transferred across to ICT as part of its restructure as agreed in policy committee in December 2020. So what we're looking for now is approval for that full team structure that is embedded within this report to make sure that we can crack on with that ambitious approach to corporate transformation and change. So I'll take you through that structure and Rob Disney will join me for the element of his team. So within the transformation and change area, there are 3 elements. There's the Strategic Insight Unit, the Transformation and Change Bureau, and the Portfolio Office. The Strategic Insight Unit, as you'll remember, is really about that forward-facing, data-driven approach with skills for data insight, analytics and data science, digital insight opportunities, and also maintaining those links with external partners to make sure we understand what our opportunities are and how we can take advantage of them. Within that structure, we have a Transformation and Change SRU manager who's been appointed, and within there we have strategic digital advisors, senior business analysts and business analysts, and a policy and research manager with 3 policy and research officers reporting to that role. Moving on to the Transformation and Change Bureau, this is mostly about the change and programme and project management capacity. And as you'll see from the structure, this is a fairly big team because there is a lot of demand for that, both currently and with our aspirations going forward. So it's led by the Transformation and Change Bureau manager. You'll see we have 3 change programme managers within there, and then project managers and project officers, and also those new entry posts for project support, which won't be appointed or funded initially, but there are our opportunity to bring in new entry posts or apprenticeships if and when we get funding available. Also worth noting that the proposal includes initially the assignment of 2 project managers and 3 project officer posts to both place and children's and family service departments. That's because at the moment there isn't really enough capacity in the departments for them to pick up that service improvement activity, and we'll need to think about how we best land that in the long term. So for the moment, there's that assignment of staff to that. And then moving on to the Transformation and Change Portfolio Office, that's really about the governance aspect of it, the oversight of delivery of the ambitions, and the support and tracking of the appropriate resource allocations to it and the monitoring of that. So that's a fairly compact team with the Portfolio Office Manager, a Principal Portfolio Officer, 2 Portfolio Officers and a Support Administrator. So I'll bring Robin at this stage to talk us through the Business Intelligence Unit.
Thank you, Sue, and good morning, everybody. Just a word on my role here, actually. I'm Group Manager Assurance, and that includes responsibility for the current performance, intelligence and policy team, which is impacted by this restructure. So in this part of the proposals, there are 2 key changes from what the subcommittee has seen previously on this. First of all, it's the team name. Previously, it was referred to as the Data Management Team. That was a working title, and in truth, there was not a great deal of love really came through for that from the consultation with staff. So we've had a rethink on that and settled on the Business Intelligence Unit as being a more fitting title really for the work of the teams in this part of the structure. The second key change is that previously a 2-team model was proposed, but now you'll see that a 3-team model is the proposal. Again, looking at the consultation and the feedback that came back on that, there were concerns raised, which I think were valid, around the managerial capacity in these teams, that it was perhaps too light with a 2-team structure and not well balanced. And there was also a concern around whether the 2-team model would provide sufficient key contacts at that team manager level for the departments to link in with. So those things were very valid to raise, and we took those into account. But it's important to say that in moving from a 2-team model to a 3-team model, that would still be within the same budget allocation for this part of the restructure. So it's a 3-team model, but it is 1 unit that's being proposed. The intention would be that the Business Intelligence Unit would have a single delivery plan each period, and the expectation would be that resources would be flexed across those teams as demands require. Just a word around the key functions of the Business Intelligence Unit. Just in relation to the other teams in the structure, we'll have a really strong relationship with that Strategic Insight Unit that Sue's outlined. In effect, the Strategic Insight Unit will be a key client of the Business Intelligence Unit. And I think really that's a fundamental part of the rationale behind this, really, because the thinking is that would relieve really the Strategic Insight Unit of responsibility and burdens really for new BI products and for maintaining the Council's Business Intelligence Hub, just allowing that the new Strategic Unit to focus on its strategic role. The second key area of activity for the Business Intelligence Unit is at the service level. So it will continue to provide analysis and performance reporting and deliver new BI products for service level use. So I think you can probably think of it in terms of if the Strategic Insight Unit is coming at things from a top-down view of what's happening in the council, then the Business Intelligence Unit is very much the reverse of that, the bottom-up view of what's going on. So I think that should prove quite interesting, really, to see how those 2 views align with each other. So just a word on the posts in these 3 teams. We've taken the opportunity to simplify the roles and propose a mix of posts in each of the 3 teams. So we have BI partners. So these staff will be working with departments to understand business intelligence requirements, and to understand what the data is telling us about services. We'll have BI analysts who will be working to collect and present data for a range of regular reporting into services. We'll have BI developers who will be maintaining the Council's Business Intelligence Hub and creating new BI products to meet changing requirements. I'm also pleased to include 2 apprenticeship posts as part of the structure in this part of it. We'll have 2 levels of apprentice, a data analyst apprenticeship at the entry level, and then a higher level data scientist apprenticeship. We have apprentices training with us in the current team, and it works really well, and so that's something that we very much wanted to continue with. Thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Rob. So those were the sort of structures that we're talking about. In terms of staffing implications of those proposed ways forward, as you'll see, I'm on point 23 now, you'll see that there's an overall reduction of 2.1 FTEs of existing roles across both functions. So in light of that, staff have been given the opportunity to make an expression of interest for VR, and that'll be considered obviously in line with HR policies as we go through the enabling process. The new job descriptions have been produced and being evaluated and graded through the Council's job evaluation process. And one of the positive things about this is all the posts within the teams will be permanently established, giving us that ambitious long-term approach to transformation and change. Quite a few of these posts have been on fixed-term contracts for quite a long time. So that's positive, but clearly, as I said before, there's always also some concerns about grading implications there. We've talked already about the some elements of the team being continued to be allocated to service improvement in the short term. And so in light of all of what we've talked about and the fact that this is a very new approach, we're looking before too long to have a review just to do that step check to say, do we think we've got this about right? Is it working well for us? Is there anything we need to change? In terms of funding, the cost of the current structure is 3.89 million. And the cost of the new structure would be a maximum of 3.94 million. So very little difference really, and that would be the highest grade. So we'll see as we work through that. The bit we need to tweak is the balance between the revenue budget and capital funding. Quite a lot is capital funded at the moment, and moving forward, we need to make sure that the service director and group manager posts and the strategic insight unit are funded from revenue budgets, because that would be more appropriate, and the transformation bureau and portfolio office costs continue to be funded from capital budgets. So what we'll need to do is take a request for permanent funding from contingency of up to 0.27 million to the Finance and Major Contracts Management Committee to make sure we get approval for that. In terms of the Business Intelligence Team funding, that's funded from revenue budget. The current PIP staffing budget is 1.18 million, and going forward it is 1.01 million. So that's no issue there. So in terms of where we go forward now, subject to subcommittee approval today, we'll go ahead with the continuation of the job evaluation and the enabling process for staff into posts with the new structures. Our aspiration is to get through by the end of April, but that'll depend a bit on how long the job evaluation process takes. Once we've got the new structure in place with staff enabled into their roles, we'll be wanting to get those new programmes kicked off in earnest, really, although we've done some work on them in the past few months. Because of the COVID impact, both on departments and our own staff, it's been quite difficult to get those moving. So we'll hopefully have the chance to do that. And as I said, we'll look to do a review fairly soon so that we can make sure that our aspirations are being met by the structure we've got and it's working well for us. So hopefully that's a gallop through that makes sense in terms of our proposals. So I'll stop there, Councillor Adair.
Okay. Thank you, Sue. Thank you for that, and for taking us through that. And I hope that the direction that we're being set on, that will pay the dividends going forward and give us that leap forward in the digital age that we'll all have to live in as we go forward. So the recommendations on page 25 of the ask you to approve the proposed detailed structure for the transformation and change and business intelligence teams, approve the funding arrangements set out in the report in paragraphs 29-33, and the request for permanent contingency from Finance and Major Contracts Management Committee of up to 0.27 million as set out in paragraph 33. Agree to receive further updates on the implementation of the model and the definition, initiation and delivery of the cross-council transformation programmes at future subcommittee meetings, and agree to the new model and structures for transformation and change being reviewed in early 2022, with the outcome of the review and any consequent recommendations being reported back to the subcommittee. So I formally move the recommendations. To have a seconder, please.
Yes, I'm happy to second it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, John. There we are. So on that now, we can take comments. Who we got first? Jim.
So thank you for that full report. I mean, change and moving forward is always necessary. However, at this particular time, with less than 40 days to go before a new administration, whatever that administration is, it's the wrong time to be doing such a massive change. So you've got it down for a review in early 2022 regardless. Within the structure, we're dependent on the regrading, which has been, as it sounds, I mean, I don't know the time scale exactly, but it does sound to be a bit rushed between now and April. And then we've got the elections in May and a new structure coming in right under a new administration, as I say, whatever one it is. So yes, it's ambitious, but again, there's nothing there about exactly how these regradings and people would actually apply. There'll be new skills. It's across the board. It's not just the grades that you've got in here, the people you've got. It's across the board. So people will be learning new skills. Fair enough. Will they be Will the actual financially accommodated, or will they lose if they're actually losing some skills that they've got at the moment? So within the structure, yes, it's ambitious. Yes, it might have been the right time to do it last year. It might be the right time to do it in June. But at this moment in time, for such an ambitious structure, I think it's actually the wrong time with a new administration coming, which may change things, may alter things. We don't know yet. And that's the point of it. We're doing a major change now when there's going to be possibly major changes May the 7th anyway. So on that one, I can't actually support it. At the same time, I can't vote against it because it's the right idea, the right things to move forward. But there's not quite enough detail in it. And for me personally, it's exactly the wrong time to be doing such a major move. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jim. Kate.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was going to make a similar point to Jim. I mean, I think just to add to Jim's comments, and I wouldn't for a minute want to take away the really clever and creative work that's been done by officers on this. I really do respect that. And clearly we've got to find new ways of doing things. My concern is that if a new administration comes in with different aspirations, different priorities, it might warrant a different structure or a different emphasis in terms of where the staff are. So that's, and of course, again, when you're in opposition, you don't go along the same journey as you do as when you're not. So it's actually very difficult to influence that. So we're abstaining really for that very reason. If Labour wins the election next time round and again, we will have different priorities, different aspirations, different approach from the current administration. It may require a different structure. So we are going to abstain on this. But thank you very much, officers, and again, respect for the work you've done on this.
Diane.
Thank you, Reg. Yes, so I'm just going to partly reiterate what my colleagues have said. Again, I think such a change is necessary, and what we're really looking at is the detail of it. One of those details, of course, is the financing, and I note that there are still the consultations and stuff going on at the moment, or the job evaluation that's going on. What I wouldn't want to see is that the delivery of the teams is compromised because you've got to hit a financial envelope. So in other words, I think this is too important, this area of work, because this is going to be, if you like, driving, supporting all the council. And so what I wouldn't like to see is that finance comes ahead of actually getting the correct jobs and the correct structures that we need in order to be able to deliver things. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, David Martin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't think that officers take any of this lightly, and I think they'll have gone into great depth to make sure that what they're putting in place is what they need, and they know better than anybody else what they actually need. And to be fair, calling for a review in early 22 gives them only 6 months to make any change, and it's such an important area of work. I don't think we can allow an election to change the course of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Or Richard Jackson?
Well, it's in a similar vein to David's, to be perfectly honest. This has come about following this committee's meeting 23rd of November, as it says in the background papers, and that talked about the transformation model and structure. And I remember it had cross-party support at the time. You know, this is, if you like, an internal restructuring. This is a management issue. Opposition members seem to suggest it was the right thing to do, but that we shouldn't do it just before an election. But you know, we do it when it comes forward, and it happens to be a couple of months before the election. We're elected for a 4-year term, and we make the necessary decisions right the way through those 4 years. If it's the right thing to do in June, let's get it done now. Let's get the new structure in place and see the improvements that it's going to bring. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Richard. Any other comments from members? Do I see a hand up from somewhere, or is that legacy hands? I think it's a legacy hand, Richard. Derek, would you like to comment on what was been just said there, because of your leadership and Nigel's leadership in it?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so just very briefly, the questions kind of touched on the same similar issue. What I would say is that from the perspective of this committee, this is the report that you members see now is the culmination of a series of reports that began in July of last year, that bit by bit have both built the case for the transformation model that we're looking to deliver, and subsequently and in consequence the transformation structure that we're looking to deliver as well. And so, but block by block, if you like, we've been putting the pieces in place. I think, as has been mentioned, I think, but just to reiterate, the opportunity to review the structure and the implementation of the structure later in the year and at the turn of the year offers the incoming administration the opportunity to take a fresh look, if necessary, at both the structures that we're employing to deliver transformation, but also critically the transformation programs themselves that we are currently gearing up to deliver, and that I've spoken about to members of this committee previously, because of course the two things, our transformation approach and our transformation structures, go hand in hand. We're, from an officer perspective, we're comfortable that the structure that is being proposed to members this morning will support that transformation model and our transformation programs as they're currently described. As they flex and iterate and change in the future, and they undoubtedly will, then there will be opportunities for members to consider how our structures and our functions can flex similarly as well in order to meet the challenges of transformation going forward. On a specific question, Councillor Meal, you asked around the kind of financial envelope. I think one of the big plus points, certainly from my perspective, in the last 6 or 7 months coming in to take a look at how we deliver transformation across the council, one of the big plus points in this report is the fact that we're able to establish for the first time a contractual basis for our staff that is pretty much permanent. The function has been funded on a more of a fixed term or temporary basis previously, and I think that's a real positive for us. And financially, I think we've now got, and you'll see it in the report, clarity around where it's appropriate for us to apportion our revenue funding and where it's appropriate for us to apportion our more flexible capital funding as well. And that funding in the future will be able to flex it up and down as the need arises. So from my perspective, this is a structure that isn't driven by the limiting demands of finance. It's driven by our need to ensure that we've got clear and sufficient finance for what will be a critical function for the council going forward. And in that sense, I see it as a really positive statement of intent from the council.
Thank you, Derek. Any other comments from any other officers? No, I mean, we can't hesitate. He who hesitates is lost, I was always told. We've made a plan, we've developed a plan, we've put the energy into it. It's all part of the transformation plan. And why would you delay it now? There's no reason to delay it now. We've got to get on with it. In fact, we're too slow at doing it. We need to speed up. So we need to get on with it. And at that point, I'm going to take it to the vote. So can we go to the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Starting with Councillor Regidare.
4.
Councillor John Cotty.
4.
Councillor Jim Creamer.
Abstain.
Councillor Kate Fall.
Abstain.
Councillor Tony Harbour.
4.
Councillor Richard Jackson.
4.
Councillor David Martin.
4.
Councillor Diana Meal.
Abstain.
And Councillor Philip Owen.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried with 6 votes for and 3 abstentions.
Demute myself now, demuted, I can talk. Let's move on to agenda item 7, progress report and delivery of improvement and change programs, projects and savings. And I understand it's Joe McCarthy who's going to take us through that. Is it Joe? Yeah.
It is, yes. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors and colleagues. Hopefully you are familiar with this report. It comes once a quarter to provide an update on the savings and efficiencies profile against the current medium-term financial strategy. This update refers to Q3 of 2020 to 21, so up until December of last year. Obviously, the current medium-term financial strategy and the savings and efficiencies profile is due to come to an end in line with the political tenure. So this will be the last but one report on this current savings profile. Generally speaking, the savings and efficiencies are on track. The portfolio of changes on track and in line to deliver the savings profile, which is currently looking at £10.3 million. You'll see in the appendices there are a number of items that are experiencing obstacles. These can largely be allocated to either direct or indirect implications from dealing with our emergency response to COVID-19, or some of the elements are either delayed or postponed in order to take into consideration the previous item that we've just been talking about, which is the review of transformation and change and an adoption of a new operating model. So the other items to just highlight to yourselves, paragraph 10 of the report just mentions we are looking to go to a new reporting regime going forwards, which will be in line with those new programmes and projects in the transformation and change model as we go forwards. And paragraph 11 just mentions a request for a write-off in the adult social care portfolio of £130,000 against maximising income indirect services project, which has been agreed in principle by the finance director. Other than that, we would expect that the savings and profiles will continue, and there are a number of options for change that have already been through the challenge process, which are due to come in line in April. So they're the headlines from the report. I'm happy to take any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask, on item 17, I was saying that the savings over the last periods there adds up to 24.2 million. Is that what that 17 on the report says to us?
Yes, that's right. That's correct, Councillor Adair. The 4-year profile was 24.2 million. The current profile in the remaining tenure of the savings is about 10.3 million.
Thank you. Okay, so taking that, thanks for taking us through that. And if I go to the recommendation on page 29 that the subcommittee considers the departmental improvement and change portfolio update and the quarterly projects and savings update and decides whether any other action is required. I'll formally move this recommendation. To have a seconder, please.
Yes, I'm happy to second it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and Kate, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for this. And clearly there's quite a lot of savings being made, which is good. I just wanted to mention the review of SEND school provision. This continues to be a really serious concern. There is just not enough money for our children with special educational needs and disabilities. And however much we seems to be lobbying in terms of getting money for this, it's a national problem. And I think it's a real worry. And I just wanted to just raise the profile of it yet again. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I don't see any other hands. Has anybody else got any comments? Everybody's happy to take the 24 million. Thank you very much. So on that point then, I'm going to go to the vote. Keith, can we take a vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, Chair, I think Councillor Owen's hand was raised. I don't know whether you got that. Councillor Owen's hand was raised, I think.
I don't have it, but Philip, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I did, Chairman. I was just going to make the point that, of course, we have been extremely successful in response to Councillor Fole's repeated comments about special educational needs funding, that we have been very successful as a result of lobbying that I and officers did with the appropriate minister at the time in securing a considerable extra investment into special educational needs in excess of £10 million, which is not an inconsiderable sum. So it shouldn't be a picture of all gloom and doom. There is always more to do, and as the number of special educational needs children rises, there will always be a need for additional capacity. And I would just mention, Chairman, that we opened the new Orchard School on Friday virtually, which created which provided 124 extra places. And at my committee last week, we agreed that King Edward School in Mansfield would form a satellite school for Carlton Digby. So this authority has a very proud record in dealing with and providing services for special educational needs children.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Any other members or comments before we go to the vote? No, let's go to the vote then, please, Keith.
Thank you, Chair. So starting with Councillor Redger,
for.
Councillor John Cotty,
for.
Councillor Jim Creamer,
for.
Councillor Kate Fall,
for.
Councillor Tony Harbour,
for.
Councillor Richard Jackson,
for.
Councillor David Martin,
for.
Councillor Diana Meal,
for.
and Councillor Philip Owen.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried unanimously.
Just be muted and muted. So can we move on to agenda item 8? And this is about a technology update. And Mark, you're going to take us through that wherever you are. There you are.
Hello. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, colleagues. Yeah, it's a quick regular technology update. This is, I've got 10 items in here, 8 of which are planned or in progress, and 2 just at the end to reflect on. I'm not going to read all the items, but I will be happy to take questions on any you wish to discuss. I'll just sort of pick out some highlights. Number 4 is the OneDrive rollout. This has been ongoing for some time. This is about replacing what is essentially a 30-year-old technology of having an H drive every time you log on and having a home drive where you might keep personal or private documents, and replacing it with the Microsoft OneDrive, which allows us to leverage the product that we've purchased as part of our Microsoft licensing, but also gives more than that, which allows access to your personal files, whatever device you log into. So it allows a potential sharing of different devices, or bring your own device if we ever look at doing that. Wide area network replacement and upgrade, I've talked about previously at another committee, I think was it in a few months ago, which gave some progress. This is still ongoing and is in progress to conclude as we expected. Number 6, hybrid meetings. I think this ties into something that Derek and Phil were talking about in terms of smarter working and about staff coming back into offices. We presented at the Nottinghamshire board on Friday how we can use mixed mode meetings where we will put software, technology and hardware into meeting rooms to allow staff to meet on-site and off-site as though they were getting the same experience. So whether you're in a meeting room on your own, a meeting room with 6 or however many people, and having multiple people on a team session off-site, it would work in a way that everybody felt included. We did show some videos at that time, and we had some great feedback. I think Adrian was there, and I think can validate that we had some really good feedback on how that might look. That's also tied in with room bookings, which I think somebody asked about earlier, which is what happens if everybody turned up at once. Well, I think we're also looking at potentially desk bookings as well, so that people won't all turn up at once, because as was pointed out, there will be nowhere for them to sit. Number 9, unified telephony tender. In the next few months, we're going to be putting a tender together to go out, and I think it was Councillor Owen that talked about how the telephony wasn't really up to scratch, and how we can't route calls internally very easily. So perhaps that's one of the things we need to look at as part of this, which is we've got Skype at the moment. Everybody in the office has a phone number that ties into Skype. Skype is a product that Microsoft are getting rid of. The lines and circuits that bring the calls in, we need to renew, and we need to map those phone numbers onto Teams, so that we won't be using Skype. We'll use Teams, but we also obviously need to include some other technology around that. And that will be ongoing for quite some time, and will ultimately tie into call center solutions as well. Number 10 is continued cloud migration. We've been doing a steady migration to cloud. At the moment, we've got about 100 web applications which we use for various sites and microsites, and we need to move those to the cloud quite quickly. Microsoft have a new technology in Azure, which allows us to take our virtual servers and move them, in some cases actually live. So we could move one now from County Hall into the Azure cloud while it's being used. So the technology is very useful to us and very effective of getting systems moved and migrated quite quickly. That's the 8 that are in planned or in progress. The last 2, number 11 and 12, are just 2 reflections really on what we've achieved with some of the developments we've done. The COVID tracking application, or COVIS as it's called, some of you may have seen, but has been had several iterations of development and has proved very helpful in terms of tracking, and was developed by the in-house NCT developers. And also the COVID Volunteer Hub, which was developed at short notice, but has now been broadened to a wider volunteer collaboration tool. And that's it. Happy to take questions on any of those, whether I mention them or not.
Demute again. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for that. And sure we'll be back to you. But before we get there, the recommendation on page 61 of the agenda pack asks that the subcommittee agree to receive a further update report on the work of ICT is doing to improve service area delivery and efficiency as shown in this report. So I formally move the recommendation. To have a seconder, please.
I'm happy to second it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I'll take Jim's first with his hand up.
Yeah,
so
just a question on actual item 11 and 12, but basically 11. I've heard very little about this, and it does seem to be a success, and we don't blow our own trumpet enough. So are there any stats or any further information of how it's working and how well it's done, basically? I mean, if it is working really well, we ought to blow our own trumpet a bit.
Okay. Before we come back to that, do I have any other hands of anybody else? It's been around for some time, Jim. You must, things mustn't be remembering things properly, but it has been around for some time.
Yes, but it's not been blown up enough.
All right. Okay. Anybody else got any hands up? No. Okay. Mark, would you like to come back and that? I think it was some of that was before your time, even.
Yeah, and well, the COVIS tracking. I mean, obviously we only developed that since March last year, but the it had 3 iterations of development, and I think the first sort of iteration was once the government had realised they can't actually track everybody, and then decided to throw it all down to local authorities to track. But as I say, we've done 3 iterations now, and each one has got more and more levels of sophistication. I don't have any statistics to hand, but I can find some for you, Councillor Creamer, no problem at all. I hear good things about it, but like you, I don't have the data, so perhaps it would be useful for my benefit to actually hear them as well, rather than just hear the rah-rah that it's a great product and we've done well with it. So yeah, happy to find that and pass that on.
Okay, Richard Jackson. Sorry, Richard Jackson.
Yeah, apologies, Chairman. I was having problems unmuting.
You're making coffee again, are you?
No, I'm ready for one day. Partner printing. A long time ago, we were shown the print room at County Hall, and particularly the print to post facility. And not being in the office as much as we normally would be, that would be a really useful thing to have on members' laptops, and I don't seem to have it. As I understood it, we should be able to just write a letter, click on print to post, and it would be printed out, stuffed in an envelope and posted out from the post room. So is that something that staff have got on their devices, and can it be something that's put onto ours?
If you're asking me, I've absolutely no idea.
Okay.
I've never used print to post. Actually, I've not even heard of it because I was here for 3 weeks and then we all went home. So, but I'm happy to find out. Maybe Deborah Newton would know if she's on at the moment.
Marge says she can answer it.
So, Councillor Jackson, so that's something that we're currently working on and looking to roll out. We've got it rolled out in limited areas, and we actually sell some of the functionality to other councils as well. So, I'm happy to look and get you the exact position of what members are going to have when we come back after the elections, because obviously we're preparing your devices and the induction programme. So I'll let you have the detail on that, but definitely keen to look at it.
Thanks, Marge.
Sorry. Okay. Everybody okay? No more hands? Okay, can we go to the vote on this then, please?
Thank you, Chair. So starting with Councillor Roger Day.
4.
Councillor John Cotty.
4.
Councillor Jim Creamer.
4.
Councillor Kate Fall.
4.
Councillor Tony Harbour.
4.
Councillor Richard Jackson.
4.
Councillor David Martin.
4.
Councillor Diana Meal.
4.
And Councillor Philip Owen.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That is carried unanimously.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you very much for that. And then with that, we'll move on to agenda item 9, and that's MyNotSAP planned improvements and progress to date. And Murray, you're somewhere. You're going to talk us through that.
I am. I'm just finding it. I've got a presentation for you. Hopefully, you should be able to see that. And
yeah,
me.
we can see that. It's come up on the screen. Okay.
Super. No, I can't see it. Why can't I see it? Here we are. So, yeah, just to give you a progress update, a little bit of background initially. Operational now for 12 months. We launched it in January. The feedback that we've had from customers has been very positive. We had a good initial uptake. In the first 3 months, it was 3,500 users, and I'll come on to give you a little bit more information about the number of users we've got now in a little while. It is under continuous improvement and review. We have been limited a little bit by the current situation in terms of COVID, but we have made progress. So we've got a lot more tiles than we had when we first added the first ones that we added. We've taken on board some member and departmental recommendations, and we've included those into the development. COVID has impacted us because we've had resources pulled off MyNotSAP and focusing on some of the COVID things that we needed to do at the customer service centre. But very successfully used to push COVID notifications, changes in tiers, links to government sites, news and updates about COVID. So we use the MyNotSAP to push out notifications to users of the MyNotSAP very successfully over the last sort of 12 months or so. And we began development of a comms and marketing plan towards the end of 2020, and we launched it in January 21, and the take up has increased significantly as a result of that work that's been done. So to take you through some of the changes that we've made, so we've added quite a few. So the one on the left hand side gives you what it looked like originally, or what I brought to you in September. And since then, we've added a few new slides on here. So we've got the community hub, a link to the community hub on there. Disruption during the winter months was added. We made the COVID news and vaccination tile a little bit bigger because there was a lot of activity on that one. Very recently, in fact, on Friday, we added the school holiday consultation. So people can link to that, and we sent out a push notification on that to over 11,000 users. So we'll wait and see what comes back on that. In terms of other new tiles, we've added a slide tile now for trading standards, and that's got consumer advice, business advice, scams and doorstep callers added to it. So that's been an enhancement that we've made. We've tidied things up on some of the slides. So instead of having Country Park after everything, we've taken that out. So actually it's a lot clearer and cleaner when you read it, and that's better for people who have disabilities, and we're not overlapping things. We've done exactly the same with the waste ones as well, because some of the recycling ones were actually going over the icons. So we've done that. Just to give you some idea of stats, when I came to give you an update in September, I think we'd got, I can't remember the exact numbers, but we've seen a 70% increase since January, since we started to do the communications. Our feedback in the Apple Store is still 5 stars, and in the Google Store, it ranges between 4 and 5 stars. Early on, it was lower, but that's what we're getting consistently now. Potholes, just under 10% of potholes now are being reported via the app. In September time, it was around 6%. So that's continuing to increase, which is great. And individual visits to the actual app itself, it's 73,000 more than it was in December. So we've loaded 70, people have visited the app 73,000 times more than they were doing earlier on in the year. And I think that's mainly due to the comms and marketing activities that started in earnest really in January. Top 4 tiles before Q4, so before January was COVID. COVID's now gone down to number 4, so people are now, the news I think is that we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Waste and recycling's back firmly on the agenda, along with highways reporting and job vacancies. So in terms of the comms and marketing activities that we've been doing, we added it to our scripts at the customer service centre. So we are talking to people about it when they ring, and it's actually on our announcements on the core routing system. That will continue to happen. We've documented the timetable, and that began in January. We added some email footers, so when you send an email, there is an option to have an email footer about MyNots app, and that went live in January. We did some graphics and banners that went on the website and the intranet, and they went live in January. We've promoted MyNots app on our core routing system. We've included it in our Email Me notifications now, and it was in County Life on the 1st of March, and we saw 700 uploads following County Life, which was really good. We've also increased the inclusion of it in a lot more of the social media posts that we're actually putting out there. We've formulated a more structured plan for our push notifications, and that work has started with the schools consultation last week. We're working with some partner organisations at the moment to try and get the app promoted on their websites. That's with our district colleagues. And we're also planning some media releases. We're at 11 creeping up to 12,000. So we thought we could do something when we get to 20,000 users. And we're also starting to do some development of videos about reporting how to report a pothole, how to find school information, and generally get information and help from our community hub. Planning's underway, and we're thinking of starting with a look how easy it is to campaign and using members to promote that. Here are some of the examples of the activities we've done. There's a lot more tweets from members about I've used this and look how good it is, which is great, thank you. There's been activity in the email me. There's a lot of activity. That's the County Life notification, and then there was one earlier on outside County Hall. In terms of what we're doing next, we're working at the moment on personalisation, and this will enable our users to tailor, well, it'll enable us to tailor push notifications. So if you are a resident in a particular postcode that's prone to flooding, we could perhaps push notifications out to those users to say, talk about weather and things that are coming up. We're also working with the supplier to allow people to tag their favourites, because not everybody wants to see everything, and the order that we place it might not necessarily be the order that people want to see it. So they'll be able to tag their favourites, and their favourites will then go to the top of the tiles. And we're expecting delivery of the first part of that, which is adding their postcode so that we can push out to them in the next few weeks. And just to give you an idea what that will look like is you'll just have a pop-up box that will come to say update your location. You put your postcode in there, update it, and the app will then know that that's where you live, and we'll be able to then tailor our push notifications. It's optional. You don't have to fill it in if you don't want to, because some people may not, but it's there, and it will enable us to do more things as we move forward. And other things that we're looking at, had a conversation with a member last week who was having a few issues with GPS settings. If you don't have your GPS settings, the map will automatically open up at a particular part of the county, meaning you might have to scroll up and down to get to where you need to be. If you have your GPS setting on, it will locate where you are, and the map will open up where you are. And some people don't know that, so we're looking at producing a guide and a YouTube video that we can promote how to use it and how to get the best out of it. There'll be more links. I'm working with planning, concessionary travel to get more links added to that. More information about visiting knots. There's lots more we can add there, so we're working on that too. When we put travel up, we're looking at having links to bus timetables so that it's one click to get the travel information, but also travel services that we provide, but also linking to bus timetables should people need it, and more links to the district council main services. I suppose as we gather feedback, we'll continue to make changes, and we want to develop a documented timetable of push notifications so that each month we're going to be focusing on a different thing, just to keep it in people's mind, because the more it's promoted, the more people will pick it up and use it. And the last thing that we're working on is making sure that everything that we do on the app follows the accessibility legislation and is in line with that. And we've got some quality control for the app itself and also for future changes. So I suppose that's where we are. That's just a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what we've been doing. Has anyone got any questions?
Okay, thanks, Ray. Oh, you're there. Sorry, you took the thing off. I got a bit lost.
Oh, do you want me to pop that back up?
No, that's all right. No, that's fine. No, it's okay. It's just that's fine. Just before we move on to the questions, it's just the recommendation on page 64 of the agenda pack asks that the subcommittee consider the proposed changes and options presented during the meeting. And I formally move the recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to second it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to say that the app in the main I find really useful. I've got the same complaint I've made the last few times in one respect, but hopefully this new personalisation might cure that, and that's the autofill. Whether it can be autofill, because it is a pain when you're there and you have to fill it all in. But at the moment, I don't know if it's other people or just me, but I'm having problems actually reporting potholes. When I get to sites, fill it in, that comes up, the GPS is on, and I cannot get it to function properly. Except there's a problem. There is a problem. So I take a picture, come home, and then I report it on the app. It seems to work that way. So I don't know if it's just me, but for the last few days, I've just had problems. Is it being overloaded, perhaps? So yes, but at the moment, I've had no problem using it. I've reported potholes in the past using the app, and I prefer it that way. It's quick, apart from the actually have to fill it out again. And the other point I have made in the past as well, about having to fill it out continuously every time you report a pothole. We'll see again, the autofill would actually fix that, or a little button. Do you have another? I've gone to several roads recently where there's a pothole. You pass a pothole a couple of yards down, you know there's another one. So if you want to take pictures of them individually, you've got to start the whole process again. So if there's something can be done about that, I'd be much appreciated. But in the main, apart from something that's happening at the moment, I find it very useful. Thank you.
Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was going to make exactly the point that Jim made about having to retype your email address in every time that you report a pothole, so it would be really useful to do that. The other thing that I'm not getting at the moment is follow-ups. So, you know, in the past, whenever you report a pothole, there's been a follow-up by email to say that it's been checked or to say that it's been filled. I'm not getting that with the app for some reason. I don't know if something's broken in a link there, and I know they're being repaired because I've seen them repaired, but no follow-up to tell me that. And I think it is important because the public, they want that follow-up because they want to know that it's been, because of their intervention, that it's been filled, because that'll encourage them to do it again. The second thing I'm really pleased to hear about is the push notifications, because I received one last Thursday and it was the first one I can remember getting through the app. It was about school holiday consultation going live. Great. There's a fine line. We don't want to send too many push notifications, and perhaps one a week's about the limit, unless there's emergency situations. But really pleased we're going to have a proper plan going forward of regular notifications going out. And do you get to know, because you opt in or out of push notifications, is that just something that's within your own phone, or do you actually know how many people have opted in and so how many people we're reaching with it? Thank you, Reg.
David Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I like using the app, and I tell all my residents to use it. I think it's great, and with Jim and with, I'm sure, and with other councillors, it'd be very handy if we could have an area where we could fill our details in and find them, and don't have to keep filling it in again and again and again, because obviously it's our job to report these issues. The other one is drains. So when it comes up to reporting a road issue, it comes up with a list on the page: report an issue, pothole, street light, trees and hedges, other road and pavement issues. Drainage is one of the main things that gets blocked. So I think that ought to be on there, because when you go on the website, you can pick up an issue, a highways issue on the website, whereas on the app, you can't. So more often than not, so I think we need a link there, because more often than not, people will be reporting a blocked drain when it's already been actioned. And on the website, you can actually see that, whereas same with a street light fault, whereas on this, I don't think you can. So some connection needs to be made there. And the autofill for councillors or residents who are permanently plaguing people to report stuff. So I use email on the website to report other stuff. But in the main, I think it's really good. It's really helpful. I think we could probably do with some kind of Facebook, Twitter push to sell it more, because it's really good.
Sorry. Any other members' questions before I go back to Marie to just fill in and answer those questions? Doesn't look like it, so Marie.
Okay. Autofill, which has come up 3 times, 100% for the 3 people that mentioned anything. It's something that we need to look at. It's the app feeds from the website, and the website doesn't allow you to put your information in and it store it. So you have to go in again to put your name and address in, and it's a bugbear of mine. We're working with the supplier at the moment because they think they'll be able to put something within the app itself that will hold that detail, so when you report your next one it will come up. So hopefully when I next come back and see you, that will be in, because it's a frustration for a lot of people. It's frustration for me, and it's something that we're trying to work with the supplier on to get it within the app itself. So although most of the things that we use in the app links to the website, and the website is the bit that is actually doing the business, you can build things within the app to hold information. So we're looking at doing that. It's a repetitive thing, and it's not great user experience, and I agree with you. So I think that answers your question, Councillor Creamer. Councillor Jackson, I'm not sure why you're not getting email notifications, because you should be. As long as you're putting your email address in and your details in, you should get exactly the same experience that you do within the website. So I will look into that and find out if that's something that's happening. I'll test it myself to make sure that it is working. If it's not working, we'll get it fixed. When you opt in or you opt out, you opt in or out on your actual phone, and we can't see that. So we don't know who's opted in and who's opted out. But what we can see is how many were delivered and the percentage that were opened. So when we send a push notification out, we can see exactly how many went, how many were delivered, and how many were opened. And our rate at the moment, which sounds low, is around between 10 and 15% are actually opened. That sounds low, but generally it's between 7 and 10%. So we're quite higher than the norm for apps and push notifications, which is good. And drains, we can certainly add a new tile for drains, a separate one, Councillor Martin, so I'll get that done this week.
Okay, thanks,
I
Maria.
think that was all of them.
Sounds like all of them. Yeah, you've got plenty to keep you going there, haven't you?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, on that note then, we'll go to the vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So starting with Councillor Regiday.
4.
And Councillor John Cotty.
4.
Councillor Jim Creamer.
4.
Councillor Kate Fall.
4.
Councillor Tony Harper.
4.
Councillor Richard Jackson.
4.
Councillor David Martin.
4.
Councillor Diana Meal.
4.
And Councillor Philip Owen.
4.
Again, Chair, carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. So I'll just take myself off. So agenda item 10 is the work programme, and you've got that in page 69. It's July 2021. It'll be a basis for the next administration, because this is the last meeting of this current administration, and that hopefully by the time we get there, the officers will have taken all our decisions today and pushed them forward, so that there's a big leap in the meantime. And having said that, I wish you all the best of luck coming up, especially May the 6th and anything else that's happening. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your attendance. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you. Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
The Prime Minister's roadmap to recovery holds out the prospect that we can return to so many of the freedoms we've been missing, and that by summer and autumn we could be enjoying for ourselves again, getting together with friends and family. All of us are looking forward to that. But between now and then, we actually have quite a long way to go. And the reason for that is that the rates at the moment in Nottinghamshire County are still running at a very high level. It's really important that we bring those rates much lower. To continue with rates at this level, we risk seeing a resurgence which would threaten our local NHS, and it's imperative that we avoid that. So I'm urging everybody, right from the start of this roadmap as we move into step 1, to continue to do all you can to pay attention and to follow all of the rules that are in place in step 1. It's really critical that we don't race ahead to a next step without completing this one. To do that would risk the recovery that we're all looking for.